strategies and tactics unique to the circumstances of America's first offensive in the Pacific, that you could win a campaign on the backs of stevedores expert in the lethal craft of combat-loading cargo ships, that the little image of an enemy ship on a radar scope will flinch visibly when heavily struck, that rapid partial salvo fire from a director-controlled main battery reduces the salvo interval period but complicates the correction of ranges and spots. In the far South Pacific, you were lucky if your sighting report ever reached its recipient. Even then, the plainest statement of fact might be subject to two or more interpretations of meaning. You learned that warships smashed and left dead in the night could resurrect themselves by the rise of morning, that circumstances could conspire to make your enemy seem much shrewder than he ever really could be, and that as bad as things might seem in the midst of combat, they might well be far worse for him, that you could learn from your opponent's success if your pride permitted it, and that the best course of action often ran straight into the barriers of your worst biases and fears, that some of the worst thrashings you took could look like victories tomorrow, that good was never good enough, and if you wanted Neptune to laugh, all you had to do was show him your operations plan. This book tells the story of how the U.S. Navy learned these and many other lessons during its first major campaign of the 20th century, the struggle for the Southern Solomon Islands in 1942. The American fleet landed its Marines on Guadalcanal and Tulagi in early August. The Japanese were beaten by mid-November and evacuated in February. What happened in between was a story of how America gambles on the grand scale, wings it, and wins. Top commanders on both sides were slain in battle or perished afterward amid the shame of inquiries and interrogations. A more lasting pain beset the living. Reputations were shattered, grudges nursed. The Marine Corps would compose a rousing institutional anthem from the notion, partly true, that the Navy had abandoned them in the fight's critical early going. But the full story of the campaign turns the tale in another direction, seldom appreciated. Soon enough, the fleet threw itself fully into the breach, and by the end of it all, almost 3 sailors had died in battle at sea for every infantryman who fell ashore. The Corps' debt to the Navy was never greater. The American landings on Guadalcanal developed into the most sustained and vicious fight of the Pacific War. 7 major naval actions were the result, 5 of them principally ship versus ship battles fought at night, the other 2 decided by aircraft by day. The nickname the Americans coined for the waters that hosted most of the carnage, Ironbottom Sound, suited the startling scale of destruction. The U.S. Navy lost 24 major warships. The Japanese lost 24. Aircraft losses, too, were nearly equal. America lost 436, Japan 440. The human toll was horrific. Ashore, U.S. Marine and Army killed in action were 1,592 out of 60,000 landed. The number of Americans killed at sea topped 5,000. Japanese deaths set the bloody pace for the rest of the war, with 20,800 soldiers lost on the island and probably 4,000 sailors at sea. Through the end of 1942, the news reports of Guadalcanal spun a narrative whose twists required no fictionalizing for high drama, though they did need some careful parsing and management, or so the Navy thought at the time. Franklin Roosevelt competed with Tokyo Rose to shape the tale on the public airwaves. In their trial against the Imperial Japanese Navy, IJN, in the waters off Guadalcanal, the Navy mastered a new kind of fight. Expeditionary war was a new kind of enterprise, and its scale at Guadalcanal was surpassed only by its combatants' thoroughgoing deficits in materiel, preparation, and understanding of their enemy. It was the most critical major military operation America would ever run on such a threadbare shoestring. As its principal players would admit afterward, the puzzle of victory was solved on the fly and on the cheap, in terms of resources, if not lives. The campaign featured tight interdependence among warriors of the air, land, and sea. For the infantry,